I've lived with anxiety most of my adult life, but I've also learned how to manage it. Structure, routine, grounding exercises, staying organized, those kept me steady. My husband Mark used to say he admired my strength. But over the last year, his tone shifted. Admiration became irritation. Concern became mockery. And slowly, I realized he didn't want a strong partner. He wanted someone easy to blame. The first sign was subtle. My anxiety pills started making me feel heavy, not calm, not balanced, heavy. My eyelids drooped within an hour, my limbs felt sluggish, and sometimes I'd wake up confused, unsure how I got from the couch to the bed. The first night it happened, Mark laughed and said, "Maybe your anxiety's finally wearing you out." Something about the way he said you made my stomach twist. Then his mother, Diane, began showing up unannounced. She'd walk through my home like she owned it, touching things, shifting them, then watching me with that smug smirk she thought she hid well. "You look tired," she'd mutter. "Maybe you shouldn't be trusted with too many responsibilities. Stress isn't good for women like you, women like you. Women with issues, women whose words could be dismissed if something went wrong." That phrase burned a hole in my chest. Within a week, the drowsiness worsened. I'd take my medication in the morning, and an hour later, I'd struggle to stay awake. My speech slurred once during a phone call. Another day, I nearly fell asleep while boiling water. I knew something was wrong, but every time I tried to explain it, Mark would sigh and say, "You're overthinking again. It's your anxiety making you paranoid." That was his favorite word lately. Paranoid. He wanted me to doubt myself. He wanted me to question my own mind. One night, as I was fighting to stay awake, I caught Diane in the hallway outside our room, whispering harshly to Mark, "She's becoming useless. You need to handle this before she ruins everything." Ruin what? Handle how? I stayed silent, barely breathing, listening through the cracked door. Mark whispered back, "I'm already dealing with it. She won't fight much longer." Something in my chest snapped at those words. That night, with hands trembling, I emptied one of my pill bottles into my palm. I knew the color, the shape, the imprint. These were not my anxiety meds. These were sedatives, sleeping tablets. The kind that knocked people out fast. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining anything. Someone had switched them. Someone is inside my home. I placed the pills back, closed the bottle, and for the first time in months, I felt awake. If they thought I would break quietly, they didn't know me at all. Once I knew the pills were switched, I stopped taking anything they touched. I hid the real medication in a place neither of them would think to look, inside a box of old holiday decorations in the attic. I kept the swapped pills in the bottle so they'd believe their plan was working, and then I watched. I acted groggy. I stumbled on purpose. I let my words slur when Diane asked me questions. And the more weakened I seemed, the bolder they became. On the fourth day, I pretended to fall asleep on the couch. I slowed my breathing, let my limbs go limp, and listened as Mark came down the stairs. His footsteps stopped right behind me. "You think she's out?" Diane whispered. "She always knocks out after taking the morning dose," Mark replied. "She won't wake for hours. Hours. So that's what they wanted. Hours where I was too drugged to notice anything." I kept still while Diane crouched near me. I felt her fingers lift my eyelids slightly, checking my reaction. I didn't move. "She's useless like this," Diane muttered. "Perfect. We can go through her items today." Go through my items? My documents? My accounts? A cold chill spread through me. Mark sighed. "Once everything is in my name, should be someone else's problem." Someone else's problem. As if I were an object to dispose of, my blood boiled under my still body, but I didn't move. Not yet. They walked upstairs, speaking freely now that they believed I was unconscious. "We'll finish transferring the money tonight," Diane said. "Then change her pills again in case she wakes up too early." She won't, Mark said confidently. After tonight, she won't question anything. I felt my breath catch. Transfer money. Pills again. After tonight. They weren't planning to just make me weak. They wanted control, absolute control. My bank accounts, my property, my decisions, maybe even my freedom. But here was their mistake. They assumed I was easy to break. They forgot everything I had survived before them. That night, when they left for the store, I began recording. Every room, every hallway. I even placed a microphone near the dining table where they always whispered their plans. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew I needed evidence. Real evidence, not just suspicions or glimpses of conversations. And it didn't take long. The next morning, Diane entered the kitchen while I slept again. She didn't even hesitate. She walked straight to my pill bottle, opened her purse, and pulled out a strip of tablets, the same shape, same color as the ones I'd found. She dumped them in, she took the real ones out, she smiled while doing it. I recorded every second from the security camera I'd hidden behind a stack of cookbooks. Her voice was clear, cold, and almost rehearsed. This will teach you to stay quiet. When I watched the footage later, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't panic. I just felt something inside me sharpen. If they wanted to play with my mind, they'd soon learn I play better. The more evidence I gathered, the more their confidence grew, and that arrogance made them sloppy. They stopped whispering. They stopped pretending. They walked around the house like co-conspirators who already believed the future belonged to them. I watched them build their little empire on lies, brick by brick, never realizing I was taking notes on every move. By the end of the week, I had a folder full of recordings. Mark is discussing transferring my savings. Diane is instructing him on how to make me more manageable. Both of them were laughing about how naive I was. Every file was labeled, time-stamped, and backed up twice, once on a hidden drive and once on a cloud account they didn't even know existed. All that remained was timing. So, I gave them a show. I acted weakly, slower, more confused. Mark noticed, and he loved it. One evening, as I sat at the dining table pretending to struggle with my fork, he said, "Maybe we should look into a care facility for her. She's getting worse." Diane nodded. "The sooner the better. And if she signs over the accounts before she goes, even better. Care facility." They weren't satisfied with drugging me. They wanted me out of the picture entirely. That was the moment I realized they were no longer dangerous, only in theory. They had crossed into something much darker, and I couldn't wait any longer. So the next morning, I disappeared for 2 hours. Just 2. I knew they'd notice. I wanted them to. When I returned, Mark stood in the doorway, arms crossed, trying to look concerned, but I could see the panic in his eyes. "Where were you?" he demanded. I kept my voice soft, tired. "Went for a walk. I needed air." "A walk?" Diane snapped. "You didn't even tell us." I looked her in the eye, calm. "I didn't know I had to." They exchanged a glance, and I caught it. Fear. Not of losing me, but of losing control. Good. Because while they panicked, I had been meeting with someone. My neighbor, Clara. She had seen me stumbling outside earlier that week and asked if I was all right. I had brushed her off then, but today I told her everything. She didn't just believe me. She got angry for me. "You need help," she said. "Real help. And you need it now," I agreed. So we made a plan. A simple one, a quiet one, a devastating one. Clara helped me secure all the evidence legally. She made sure everything was stored safely. And more importantly, she agreed to be my witness when the moment came. By the time I walked back into the house, everything was in motion. Mark and Diane had no idea that the weak, confused woman they thought they were destroying had already built a case strong enough to crush them. All I needed now was access to their bank passwords, the final piece. And surprisingly, they handed it to me without realizing what they'd done. Their downfall started with something so small, so stupid. It almost felt insulting. Mark left his phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while he argued with Diane about dinner. He was ranting about how I'd forgotten to thaw the chicken, even though Diane had hidden it on purpose earlier that morning. I stood behind the doorway, listening to them blame me for something they engineered. But while Mark waved his hands and paced, his screen lit up. Then it happened again. And again. 3 banking notification banners, each showing partial information, each just enough to confirm exactly what I needed. His password reset email, the recovery phone number, the bank's 2-step verification prompt. They were moving money again. They thought they were taking the last pieces of my life, but they had no idea I was memorizing every glimpse of that screen. I stepped quietly into the kitchen, pretending I'd just walked in, and Mark shoved the phone in his pocket so fast he nearly dropped it. "What are you sneaking around for?" he snapped. I offered a small, tired smile. "Just looking for tea," he scoffed, but Diane watched me more carefully than usual, eyes narrow and suspicious. She sensed something. Not enough to stop me, but enough to know she didn't fully control me. That alone made her nervous. Good. Once they were asleep that night, I put everything into motion. My own laptop was compromised, I knew that, so I used the spare one I had hidden under old blankets in the storage room. A relic from before the marriage, long forgotten by everyone except me. The moment I opened it, the quiet blue glow felt like freedom. I worked methodically, not rushing, not shaking. Step 1. Access Mark's bank using the exact password sequence I saw flash on his screen. He used the same pattern for everything. Predictable, lazy, arrogant. The login went through. Step 2. Confirm where he had moved my money. A joint account with his mother, an account they thought the world didn't know about. Step 3. Transfer everything back into a private account I had opened years before, in my maiden name, untouched and invisible to them. Every last dollar they had pulled from me slid cleanly away from their greedy hands. Step 4. Change their account passwords. Not to anything complicated. Just to something they'd never guess, the date they first replaced my pills. The cruelty was poetic, necessary. By the time the sun began to rise, they were penniless, locked out, and still sleeping like infants who thought they were safe. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and felt calmer than I had in months. But I wasn't done. Taking back what was mine wasn't revenge. That was justice. Revenge was what I had planned next, and it would hit them before breakfast. The morning I left, the house was silent in a way that felt staged. My husband and his mother were still asleep on the couch, knocked out by the very pills they thought they'd tricked me into taking. Their empty tea mugs were still on the table. I had counted on that. I moved quietly, gathering only what mattered: my documents, my laptop, the small bag I kept hidden in the laundry room for months. Everything else could burn for all I cared. Before stepping out, I checked the security feed one last time. Both of them were unconscious, breathing thick and heavy. Safe enough for me to walk straight through the front door, but leaving wasn't enough, not after what they'd done. I opened my laptop, logged into the bank portal, and confirmed the change I'd made the night before. Their joint savings account now required a password reset only from an email they no longer controlled, one I had rerouted. I didn't take a single dollar. I didn't have to. I just wanted them to choke on the panic of losing access to the one thing they valued more than my safety. The final step was sending the evidence packet to the police: photos of my swapped pills, screenshots of their messages, timestamps, receipts, and recordings of their strategy talks. I copied everything to my lawyer too. No room for excuses. No room for manipulation. No room for them to twist the story. By the time they woke up, I was gone. The bank had locked them out. The police were already reviewing the evidence. My lawyer had filed for protection. And they had nothing, no access to my accounts, no access to my phone, no access to me. Hours later, my husband called from an unknown number, his voice shaking. He asked where I was. I told him the truth. "I'm somewhere you'll never reach again," his mother shouted in the background, demanding to know what I had done. I let her ask. "I did exactly what you taught me," I said, keeping my tone even. I paid attention, then I ended the call. The next morning, my lawyer forwarded me the notice. The case had been accepted for investigation. And for the first time in years, I finally felt the ground under my feet steady. They took my peace. They tried to take my mind. All I took was my life back.